Okay, it is 1:30. Let us get started. So I'm going to call us to order and ask Madam Clerk if you will do a roll call, please.
Absolutely. Do we have Councillor Carlson?
Councillor Carlson, are you here?
He says he's present. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel? Here. Councillor Middleton Hope?
Here.
Chair Croson?
Present.
Everyone is present. We have a quorum, and I do not see anyone online at this point.
Okay, so we are starting the governance meeting. Now, we're going to move on to the adoption of the agenda. Before we do, you may have noted that there is an item missing from the agenda. Mr. Matthews is not able to be here today, and so considering that and his role in it, we have moved the council tech policy to the June meeting, unilaterally at the agenda meeting. I am hoping that no one has any concerns about that. June governance meeting. Yeah, I don't see it on the agenda. Yeah, that's why. But we had put into the directed initiatives that it would be, and we had promised you last time, so I just wanted to make sure. All right. I know. So we will move to the adoption of the agenda. I have a motion from Councillor Carlson. Be resolved that the May 22nd, 2025 agenda of the Governance Standing Policy Committee meeting be adopted as presented. I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to do my acknowledgement statement, so because I jumped into it. Councillor Carlson.
You've explained why one of the policies is not in front of us today. I'm just curious, is there any other additions or changes to the agenda? I'm seeing none. Then unless there's any questions by my colleagues, I will call for the vote.
Question's been called. All in favor? And we have adopted our very first agenda. No, I'm just kidding. I jumped over the acknowledgement statement. I apologize. I will step back. The City of Lethbridge acknowledges that we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot people past, present, and future while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationship to the land. The City of Lethbridge offers respect to the Métis and all who have lived in this land and made Lethbridge their home. Moving now to the consent agenda, I have a motion from Councillor Schmidt-Rempel. Be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee, 1, approve the minutes of the Governance Standing Policy Committee meeting held on April 24th, 2025, and authorize the Chair and City Clerk Designate to sign the same. And 2, receive for information a status of directed resolutions for May 22nd, 2025. Councillor?
If my colleagues have no changes or concerns or comments with regards to the consent agenda, I would call for the vote.
Question's been called. All in favor? And that too is adopted unanimously, which moves us on. Today we have 1 presentation and 3 submissions and a confidential item. We will start with the presentation on snow and ice control service level changes. Ms. Ruck, you are our presenter. Thank you for bringing this forward on a nice sunny day, but we will now talk about snow and ice.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to present about our snow and ice control service level changes and the implementation, specifically the windrow assistant service that we implemented on a trial basis last year, and that we want to provide you some updates on how things went. So in addition to this presentation, we provided some reports, but the presentation today will focus on some timelines, financial impacts, our approach to implement the WAS services, and then also what we heard and learned from the first year of trialing this. Next slide, please. So this is again our project timeline. As you might remember, in 2020, the fiscal and operational review suggested that the City of Lethbridge should look into providing more plowing on our roads and less snow removal. So snow removal is the stuff where we use graders and grade it all in the middle and truck it away. We've worked on this project since 2021 through several phases, and each phase included a lot of public engagement and communication. So next slide, please. As we know, the weather and snow accumulation impacts snow and ice control budget significantly. And the recent work that the city conducted as part of the climate adaptation strategy confirms that especially frequent heavy snow events can impact and are anticipated further in Lethbridge down the road. Our work over the last 4 years has allowed us to understand that plowing is really 25 times cheaper than snow removal. Next slide, please. As mentioned, we had significant engagement during all our project phases, and we identified that the windrows are an issue for the plowing to the right. So we presented council last fall a complementary program option 1 here, with the windrow assistance program. And council gave us direction to implement that program on a subscription basis. Our goal was to test communication tools, target residents with mobility challenges, and also set service level expectations with residents and to understand the cost and timelines a little bit better. Next slide, please. So what we did, these are some pictures of the windrow openings that we performed. So in September, we contacted all residents with a direct postcard drop-off. There's approximately 6,000 along these routes. And we communicated a clear deadline by when they had to sign up. 311 kind of was our agent that vetted all these requests. And by the deadline, we received 475 subscriptions. We distributed more program information to those subscribers, hired contractors, trained the contractors, so that we were ready for our first and unfortunately only snow event when we activated this in 2024. And we had at that time 475 subscriptions. So the top 2 pictures there show how it looked when people got a curb opening. We had around 80 of those. And then we had the remainder was those driveway openings there at the lower picture. That's how it looked like after the contractor was done. So the contractor, we mobilized all contractors that had bid on the job just to really expedite the service. And we were able to do it in less than 24 hours. So our plows were done, and then the contractor came, and in less than 24 hours, all these openings were created. Afterwards, we collected feedback. We waited for more snow events where we could declare snow roads, but unfortunately the weather didn't support us there. We had minor events, but nothing that warranted a snow road declaration. So we had a survey at the end of March till middle of April where residents could provide feedback. And again, we found that the community is more engaged regarding snow and ice control when there is weather impact. So we saw in the participation in the survey that we didn't have significant winter, and therefore we had way less survey respondents that we saw last year. Last year we had over 2,000. This year, next slide please, we only had 692. So out of those, we structured the survey in a way that we could differentiate the data between snow route residents that had the windrow assistance service, and just the regular community or commuters. Only 75 of these responses were from snow route windrow opening assistance service subscribers. The survey again showed that the Loop app is the preferred method of notification on how the community stays informed when snow routes are activated. We did find that more residents are now aware of the cost savings that we have or that we can find. So 15%, that's quite a significant increase, more awareness in the community about this. Then we also noticed that accessibility and mobility challenges are mitigated with the Windrow Assistant services, but many subscribers still desire a faster service. Even though we were there within 24 hours, that was not enough. And additionally, we saw, again, lots of comments about that more parking enforcement is needed because residents are really frustrated if the plows come by and neighbors are parked in the parking lane, and now that creates future ruts and issues. Okay? So today we are here, next slide please, presenting just for your consideration 3 options. So option 1 would be, especially because we only had 1 event last year, didn't have a lot of opportunity to test this, to continue for another year on a trial basis with this Windrow subscription program. Potentially there might be more households signing up or not. That would give us an opportunity to find out. We have this costed roughly here, and we would also have the option to leverage the same contracts that we had in place last year with those contractors with minor price adjustments. We believe we can definitely get this done. These Windrows opened in less than 3 days. If we decide for option 2, that would significantly increase the number of households, all driveways along these snow roads, but it would exclude curb openings, keeping in mind that we had over 70 curb openings like during the last season. So there is people in need that need a curb opening, like just where they need to park their car and be able to get through the Windrow to their house. So option 2 would only focus on driveways, and we believe that because of the amount of driveways, that would take longer and create therefore its own issues again, and it is quite more expensive. And then option 3 would be just to provide snow removal services along these 81 kilometers for a priority 2 snow removal. That is kind of what we hear in all the public communication and feedback, that residents want the old system back, but preferably more frequent, right? They want it graded into the middle and moved away, and for priority 2 for 81 kilometers, that would again put a lot of constraints over our resources, timelines, and also budgets, because people would expect us to happen quite frequently. When we think about the 2024 winter in its own, we plowed along those roads 81 kilometers 6 times. That's normally a service level that we wouldn't have provided in the old system, going by and removing that snow that often with a removal service. Next slide, please. So therefore, yeah, our recommendation from administration is for you to consider to continue plowing to the right with a subscription-based Windrow Assistant service for the next season, and then for us to collect feedback again. Hopefully have more data points and a better picture of what timelines and costs are, and then make a decision in 2026 how we want to go further. Questions?
Thank you. First, we'll see if there's any members of the 100 people here from the public who would like to speak. Okay, there's nobody here from the public, so no one. You guys don't see the 100 people that I see? Oh, that might be a problem. So we will then move to questions from members of the committee, starting with Councillor Carlson.
Pardon me. Thank you for, Madam Chair, thank you for the presentation. So we utilize contractors at the moment to clear the windrows from certain areas. A friend of mine who used to run snowplow keeps telling me that we need gates on the snowplow so that as you're going, you can just slam the gate down and it'll skip the driveway. Is that something we've tried or other communities have tried?
Now it's on? Okay. So we operate graders with gates, and graders move slower than plows, and they have the option to do this. We only have 2 graders, and when we like distribute staff over winter hours. We have one full-time grader operator per shift. So for 81 kilometers, that would be challenging for us. I'm not aware of contractors operating with gates on their graders. That's something we could look into. When we scoped this contract, we gave contractors the option to pick their equipment. And from hand shoveling to graders, there was everything in between. So yeah, and the speed didn't differ much, which was surprising.
That is surprising. But you said, I think it was Rook, you said our graders have the ability to use the gates. Do we use them when possible, or?
We use them right now for intersection opening. You know, we plow, and then we create these windrows on intersections, lane openings. So that's where we focus. We take our graders and do a clean up. It would be very time consuming to do that for every driveway, or the subscription gate base, you kind of need to know where the household is. So there's a bunch of nuances to that if you want to use graders for that.
Okay, thank you. I see Mr. Jules.
And if I can add, we have 12 snowplows right now. It's not possible to put on snowplow gates onto those plows. Some are belly plows, some are front plows, but those are the ones that go 20 to 40 kilometers per hour. It's a fraction of the time to do the plowing with those. Occasionally, we've used a snowplow to plow the majority of the snow, and then we do a grader cleanup pass. But the cleanup pass is so slow that, like Julianne said, it's so much slower to use a grader than snowplows. That's the inefficient way of pushing it to the right. But we want to push it to the right fast so that people can use the roadway as fast as possible.
Excellent. And thank you both for that. I can now answer my friend of how we're using them or not. If I can, Madam Chair, it's kind of a circle around to those yellow bulb outs we're seeing. And so when you're talking snow plows, I'm assuming those are going to be removed before we have to plow the snow routes, otherwise they would just get wiped out. But for starters, can you explain because I'm getting a lot of questions from the public, and my lack of technical knowledge on what those new yellow bulb outs are is unsatisfactory. Can you maybe tell us what those are used for exactly first?
Are used as traffic calming devices. Basically, I think we had a chat in the transportation safety meeting about methods of reducing speeds and improving safety. I think those curb extensions as traffic calming measures lower traffic speeds about 5 to 10 kilometers, depending on the situation. So it's to reduce speed. It's also to reduce the intersection crossing distance for a pedestrian, so then they don't have to worry about traffic in the parking lane. Just to correct you, they will not be removed in the winter, though. A snowplow would go around them just like a parked car.
Okay.
Because that's why they have a delineator on top. So the snowplow operator better know where those are, or they would hit them.
Yes.
And so just like they do tap into curbs, they have all the snowplow operators know where the curbs are, and they'll know where these curb extensions are. I believe there's about 10 locations we've put in right now, and we've got various levels of acceptance with the public. Some we didn't do a great job telling the public ahead of time.
That's what I'm
where we're putting them, but we presented it at numerous community conversations and public meetings, but we didn't advertise it enough. So change is hard. Change is hard for everybody, and we have to advertise that change. So some people have just asked questions on why and accepted it, and some people are opposing it as a change. So we're just saying, give it 6 months, give it at least a winter to see how they will be, and we can adjust them, either adjust them, remove them, but they are for an intended safety purpose. So that's the main reason for them.
Excellent, and I appreciate that because we got a lot of questions and I was making stuff up, which is always fun. But yeah, so a lot of folks thought they were for bike lanes, but they are basically to increase visibility on pedestrian crossings and to shorten the distance for pedestrians to reduce collisions and increase safety. Is that what I can tell people?
Exactly, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Sure, I let you be completely off topic, but that's okay. I'm just kidding. Councillor Middleton Hope, the floor is yours.
And thanks for the presentation. As I have read through the report, it looks like our savings are in, we had one snow event declaration as opposed to perhaps multiple. The Windrow program it reduces our requirement to pick up snow substantially. In fact, it's somewhere in the 400-500% difference between the two. And then there's the enforcement of the snow routes. So these are all cost savings. Is that correct?
Go ahead.
So there's the cost savings is that a kilometer of road plowed is
Yep.
around $260 a kilometer versus $6,700.
$6,800.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So that's the difference, right?
right.
Another difference is so that we plowed way more often than we would normally do snow removal. So we clear the roads more
Right.
frequently.
But it's a savings. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
Good. So I notice that we have a $500,000 deficit. How is that accumulated?
So I expected that question. So I
Good.
have some
I'm glad
notes
you
here.
did.
One component, big cost component, was that we ordered more salt. We kind of had depleted our inventory in salt, and we ordered 500 tons extra at $185.
That'll take us through to this season as well?
No, we normally, like, we just ended the season. For us, the season ends kind of mid-April when we feel safe. It shouldn't snow any longer.
Yeah.
Then we survey the piles and assess how much we buy for next year. But we always try to have enough in stock that we don't run out in the middle of the winter.
Okay.
Then we also, part of our budget is also the bus stop snow removal contract. And because of the 2024, these lots of events in the spring of 2024, the cost for that contract increased. Then we had more labor charges than usual, again, because we plowed these 81 kilometers 6 times. And then I'm sure you all remember that significant event in March of 2024 where we had 40 centimeters. We had to mobilize a lot of contractor resources to manage all that snow. We did in school zones, snow removal, where we had the blowers and the trucks going on and graders. We even had to supplement our plow workforce with additional contractor graders to manage everything, so that incurred a lot of cost. So just, the 2024 year and all the events are an example on how quickly costs can get accumulated due to significant events.
Rapidly get out of control.
Yeah, and especially this 40 centimeter event and all the work that Mandy and Parker and her group have done showcases that there will be more events like this, right? We all saw in the news how Montreal got snowed in earlier this season, and how significant of cost it was for them. So just something.
Okay, the next question is, Mr. Jewell, are we going to be stopping the courtesy parking tickets?
I believe the first event that was in November, we did not issue any courtesy parking tickets. There were.
But just the first event, again, growing like learning curve for the residents, we decided to do courtesy parking tickets. For the next event, we wanted to do real parking tickets, but unfortunately, we didn't have a real event.
Okay, so coming into this year, we're in real time, because they've been warned.
In general, we were always planning on doing the first event, regardless of when that first event is, as a courtesy parking ticket. Just as a reminder, because people tend to forget at the first part of the year, October, November. The first event, we would likely do courtesy parking tickets, and every event thereafter, we'll be ticketing. Unless we get a direction not to do that, and I'm looking at Mr. Sanchez, we could be ticketing right off the bat, because this is the 3rd year that we've been doing this. People should be getting used to it. Yep. So I'm open to either or.
Okay.
I just want to add a little bit and just remind, I'm gonna speak a little bit on behalf of Phil, which is our parking coordinator. I also want to remind SPC that we have the parking staff that enforces is the same one that enforces in downtown, in the hospital. So those are the struggles that we have sometimes too. And I know we have been trying to dedicate them there, but is a moving game. So we're trying to make sure, I know Phil made that comment to the team, well, I also have limited resources. So we're trying to enforce as much as we can, but also keeping in mind that they have other areas that we need to also do the rounds and monitor and enforce.
Okay. So what I hear you saying, Mr. Sanchez, is we are looking aggressively for ways to ensure efficiencies in our plowing strategy.
That's correct. And also, just to add a little bit to your previous question, I think Julian did a good job explaining that. But you saw that this year we were in a deficit. If we were not doing what we're doing right now, that deficit would have been probably $1.5 million, $2 million. And that's where Mitch in this case and Daryl are happy because we're not tapping into MRSR every time that we go above and beyond. So these efforts are the ones that are allowing us to look for more efficiencies. When the team recommended option 1 was because we don't think we need to open the driveway for everybody. There will be people that are capable of doing that. And the real example is that we got less than 600 people asking for that help. So we only do it for those that they really need to. And also the team has been working with the campaign. I don't recall the name of the neighbor program, the Mighty Neighbors, but let's use people around. So see how we can be more efficient and use the funding that we have as much as we can and provide more services.
Okay. You refer to pain. This is less painful, but it's still pain.
It is like anything in life, yes.
Okay, last question then. It is. I like that. Just take a couple of Tylenol before you go out on the street. Complaints, Ms. Ruck. They indicated that there were 57 complaints from residences/businesses. Do we know, and have we broken the data down to determine how many are associated with bike lanes?
So we try to track those separately. You mean the bike lanes downtown?
I do.
Yeah, so we track those separately because they are not related to our plowing and windrowing, right? We track when residents call about complaints about the windrows or this program, we track that separately.
Okay, so it has nothing to do with people struggling to clear the business and for their sidewalk in front of their business and the snow going into the bike lanes and people struggling to get over the bike lanes to get to businesses. This is not, those 57 complaints are not included.
No, and I wouldn't know data top of my head. I don't recall that there were many complaints that ended up on my desk. Yeah.
Okay.
To that, the downtown has always been and will continue to be a plow to the middle and windrow out. So that's the way. The fact is, we haven't even done a snow removal event in the downtown this winter because we've had such a good winter. So Mr. Matthews over here will be very happy that we'll have a huge surplus because we haven't had to do snow removal, but the traditional way we would do snow removal, all of the downtown, including the hospital area, priority 1 is to windrow it to the middle, including cleaning those bike lanes out. So the plow to the right is just in
before we go on any further, I heard the term "we have a surplus." How does that surplus factor into a $500,000 deficit?
Do you mind going to the snow removal, the 10-year chart? There are years we have surplus. I'm anticipating
what you
one
mean.
in 25.
Yep.
Because the snow removal that
Year
Julian
end
was
is
talking
the
about
31st?
was 24. But from January 1st of 25 till this winter, we haven't had to do any snow removal downtown at all. And I'm anticipating, hopefully, we're going to have a nice winter.
Yeah. Well, no, it's past long weekend, so we're okay. Good. Thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Thank you very much. And I remember seeing snow in June, so I think we should be careful with, and August. So we do need to be careful with that. I guess then the first question I will ask with regards to how we're managing plowing downtown, which also includes bike lanes, because we know that clearing both of those did cause some accessibility issues in the past. And how have we addressed that? I guess we don't know how we've addressed that yet because we haven't had an opportunity to solve those issues.
In the downtown, we've rented equipment in snow removal, we've got a different budget. This is the budget in red that is the snow removal, is how we do our snow removal for downtown. The windrowing of the main road goes to the middle. We have a piece of equipment that'll remove snow in those bike lanes. We do
Okay.
that every winter, every snowfall.
When we know these bike lanes have been a challenge for some downtown users, so we actually created a higher service level than for the roadway. So we plow the bike lanes more frequently than, so we already plow the bike
Okay.
lane before we even address the road.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. So we know that in changing this service level, we've saved money in doing this. We've made some changes. I've had really good feedback from anybody who's been part of the Windrow Assistance Program, so thank you very much for that. That has worked out well. But what are some of the unintended consequences of making the change that we didn't consider, that we are now looking at having to consider?
I think it will be a challenge to meet people's expectation to be faster. Like we mobilized all the contractors that bid on this project, and it was still not fast enough in some people's opinion. That's from my perspective, that's gonna be a challenge. And the more that sign up, the more we have to stretch resources. And so just communicating those expectations of that service level, that will continue to be a challenge and have people agree with it.
And do we charge for the subscription service?
No, we absorbed the cost in our budget, and the approach was that we want to create a service level that's more equitable to the community, because we really target people with mobility challenges. And our vetting agents, 311, confirmed in the conversations that they had with all subscribers that they felt good about this program, and it's really people in need that are subscribed and using this program.
Okay, but we could potentially then see coming up this year more subscribers to that program, and later on it becoming a budget pressure for us as we see more people subscribing to the program who are eligible.
Right. When we originally looked at this to cost it, I think for option one, we said, oh, we have 3,000 driveways along those routes. We anticipate maybe 1,500 maximum would subscribe. So that was kind of, but even at 1,500, the numbers still balance out that it's cheaper to offer a Windrow assistance service than going back to the old way, just grading it into the middle and removing it.
Okay. Okay. In the report, we're still seeing some barriers to accessibility, even with the Windrow Assistance Program. How are we looking to address those issues? So working with those members of the public, either maybe they need to be signing up for the program, or maybe there's something else they need to be doing, or something we can be helping them with.
We've really tried to promote through our accessorized bus drivers and through service providers in town that this program is there as an option to really target that mobility challenged audience and just advertise for the program. It is really hard to schedule like you in versus your neighbor, just from a resource distribution. So we'll just try to get as many resources to the program as we can, to be as quick as we can. That's all we can do at this point that I can know of.
Okay, I will step out for now. I've got a couple more questions, but I'll step out for now.
I had to chuckle. I think you're the only person who is unhappy it didn't snow more last year. That's a very different perspective than we generally hear. So I know we have talked about this many times, but I think it's still something the public wants to better understand, is why we made these changes. Can you just remind us overall why we went to this? Is it entirely cost saving? Are we getting better service for it? What is the reason we have gone this way?
So in 2020, when KPMG looked at what other municipalities do and what we do, they found that like we had 81 kilometers where we were doing this very elaborate operation with snow removal. And they said compared to other communities, that's very uncommon. And that we should consider to just do plowing, which is way cheaper. So that's one of the reasons. And then again, the other reason, as I said early on in 2024, we plowed there 6 times in these areas. And normally in a year like 2024, residents in that area would have only gotten their road cleared during the 40 centimeter snow event in March. So once. I know it's hard for the people to understand when they are shoveling their windrow in the morning and trying to get to work, but we are there more often and we create better driving lanes in those areas, and we have heard from commuters that really appreciate that the roads have better surfaces and there's less ice. And then it melts quicker too, right? You have bare pavement way quicker because you removed the snow.
Right. It is true. I took photographs of one that was plowed and one that wasn't, a road that was plowed and one that wasn't. And it was about 48 hours faster to get the road cleared that had been plowed than the other one. And it was quite unbelievable how it did affect the driver. And one of the things about this whole program is you're trying to balance a whole bunch of needs. You've got the need of the driver, and this is absolutely improving the driving conditions on the road. You have the need of the pedestrians, though, because, right, they need to walk, and if there's a windrow, it becomes very problematic. Then you have the needs of the person who lives there, who's, might get their snow that they've shoveled back on their property after we've gone through. And then you have the needs of the people who can't park in front of their house because we have got parking restrictions. So 4 groups, maybe the same people all at one time, but there's a lot of different things there. And you're looking to balance all of those. And I'm sure there's other groups I haven't even thought of. And so what you're essentially looking for is you haven't confirmed that you have found the right balance and you need another winter to know the conditions that will do it. Would that be an accurate description of what we're looking
Yeah,
at?
that's our ask today.
Okay.
Yep.
So, yeah, the balance, we're trying to find the right balance. And I'm happy, well, I would have liked more moisture, but we need more snow and one more year to figure it out. Okay. All right. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, back to you for your questions.
Thank you very much. And just a couple last questions from me. One of the biggest complaints I had was that when the plowing was done, people didn't know when they could return to their neighborhood. And they were parking a few blocks away, and they really just wanted to get back to their neighborhood and parking. Is there a way that we can get information out faster when plowing is done and parking is returned to normal so that people can get back in front of their homes or back into their neighborhoods or closer to their homes faster?
Like we use the Loop app, we notify when we activate or when the parking ban is is active, and then we also notify when the parking ban is lifted again. We just on our side need to make sure that all contractors are done everywhere, right? We do spot checks that the work is completed and those things. So that's why there might be a lag in how quickly we open it up again. But it's a community-wide communication tool that we use.
Okay, so it's just there might be that gap that you're doing the spot checks, so they may just have to wait for a bit. Okay, and then secondly, and I'm not sure if you can answer this or not, how is the Lethbridge Loop app working as an advisory tool, and what is the pickup on that as a communications tool? I mean, really, our website and that app are our most reliable tools in getting the information out there. What is our pickup rate? How is that working?
I'll defer that to one of these communications ladies.
Don't forget Mr. Cool.
I was going to say Mr. Cool's back there. He can give us a hand too. Okay.
I don't know the number off the top of my head right now, but I think, I'm going to say something and it'll be wrong, but I think we have, because if we have 30,000 households, I think we have like 20,000 downloads or something.
Okay, so
I
we've
mean,
got a
there
good
might be multiple
saturation rate.
people in
Okay.
one family, right? Or one household that have it, or, but when we look at other, like even the company that helps us with that, the vendor, they've been very, very impressed with the uptake on it. So it's got some really good reach, and we continue to advertise it on a regular basis too, so.
Okay, that's fantastic to know that it's got that kind of saturation rate. Thank you very much. Yep, that's it.
All right, that seems like all the questions we have, so we will then move to the resolution. And so the resolution that has been forwarded, be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee recommend that Council, 1, direct administration to proceed with option 1 on a trial basis for the 2025-2026 winter season, and 2, direct administration report back on the results of the 4-year trial of snow and ice control service level changes at a Governance Standing Policy Committee meeting in spring of 2026. This motion is Councillor Carlson's.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate the presentation, appreciate the recommendation from administration. I'm hopeful that a year from now, we'll also be hearing Ms. Ruck say, we didn't get any snow again, so can we do it for another year? That is my hope. but I also live in reality. So I appreciate the information, and unless there's any further questions or debate,
So we are anticipating that the $500,000 deficit may very well be wiped out before the end of the year, and will we hear before we go into budget discussions in the fall?
in the
That previous slide, every year we'll have deficits and surpluses. Rarely do we ever match our snow and ice control budget exactly. That chart showed the 10-year history. In 2021, I think it was a $750,000 surplus that went back to MRSR. So what'll happen in the 2024 year, the borrow from MRSR will go back into the transportation snow and ice control budget to offset that. I'm anticipating in 2025, we should have a surplus. So it's a plus and a minus. That being said, I don't want to jinx myself with the fall of 2025. We could have a terrible winter. So right now we have an excellent first part of the winter where we haven't had to remove a stitch of snow in priority 1 snow removal. And so we're hoping for the best relative to 2025. That would go back in to the MRSR.
Yeah, I think we all understand that. What I'm asking is, will we know whether we have that continued deficit of $500,000 or that deficit has been wiped out and there may be a surplus by this fall when we have budget deliberations?
When do we know? I don't,
I
when do we
think
know that?
Or does it
can
get
probably-
reconciled in
I
2025?
can probably
and
answer
then it
that.
moves to 2026?
Mr.
think-
Sanchez, if you'd like to weigh
Yeah,
in,
I think
please.
this will be done by the end of the year, it's calendar year, so we won't be by the fall. It will be most likely spring of 2026 when we do the year end and we have the balance. And on top of that, I did check with Mr. Stevenson. We still owe to the MRSR. So we have a deficit, and every time we talk about snow removal, Mr. Matthews look at me and say, you still owe me. And we still need to pay that back. So
Yeah.
that's why we're doing most of this work. In some years, like Darwin say, up and down, but we need to pay that and then build a reserve. So we have our own bank account.
And there were some pretty poor years. If you look 2013, this looks fairly good other than 2018, but 2009 and 2011, I barely remember those nightmares when it was double over the snow removal budget. That all came from MRSR to pay for that as emergency snow removal. So that's why we're trying to remove the variability of snow removal, and that's the red bar. When we have too much snow, we have to remove it. If we plow it to the right, it's less high cost, 25 times cheaper, even though we can do it more often, right?
Right. Okay, thank you.
Oh, I think, yeah, we always have to be careful. Even though there are cost savings, we're not actually getting cost savings, we're just getting less debt to the MRSR, which is good, but people can't expect that they're going to be seeing their money back. But we do have the motion on the floor. The question has been called. Did you have more to add, Councillor
No,
Carlson?
I was channeling the chair and I called for the vote.
Okay. Okay, questions called. All in favor? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. So we move from presentation to submissions. So we have in front of us three different submissions. First one is street sweeping. Again, coming out of transportation from Mr. Jewell. The information was provided. So high level is, the recommendation is to remain as status quo for what we have based on the changes that were made a few years ago. But are there any questions? And I do see question. Again, before I ask for council, there are no members of the public, but of course members of the public would be able to ask if they were here. Councillor Middleton Hope, go right ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I do have a couple of questions. To outsource the sweeping and removal of gravel from major arterial roadways in the city that we currently do with our own staff. Are there benefits for us to do it? Because I know that with several of the parking lots that are owned by the city, we outsource that to private companies. Is there an opportunity there for us to continue to outsource to other companies to do the major arterial roadways? And is it something that we would want to be doing?
It's a very difficult question to answer very quickly because it's not as easy as a snowplow has to have an operator as a specialized piece of equipment. Alberta Transportation might be doing snowplowing on highways, but in the city it's very different. But a street sweeper is a street sweeper, and there are parking lot street sweeping companies. But when we balance our workforce, that's what I'm talking about now, is we have summer paving and potholing. We have winter snow removal. And in the spring, we have street sweeping. So the current workforce, 19 to 24 operational people, they're utilized properly. But what you're asking is we could be parceling off a bit of work on arterial roads, for example, some contracted out street sweeping. But right now we have, in this particular street sweeping initiative, we went from 7 sweepers down to 5. So we reduced our street sweepers. We just ran them a bit more and modified the service level a bit, saved about $185,000 and adjusted our service level. So that was the good news story. We adjusted our service levels down, saved $185,000, and we could still manage getting the majority of spring sweeping done, unless it's a terrible winter. And we did a lot of our other modified summer sweeping and fall sweeping. We've still managed the majority. 85% of the sweeping we used to do, we're now continuing to do. Your question is around, should we parcel off some of that work? We could look at that, but then we would have to look at, would we save a street sweeper? Could we go down to 4 versus 5? Mm-hmm. Would we be able to save the permanent worker, or are we hiring part-time people? It's a complicated exercise to go, as long as we have the majority of the street sweeping work in spring. That takes a lot of effort. Probably 10, 15 people working full-time for 6-8 weeks. In the arterial roads, you could be parceling that off and contracting it out, but it would take work away from our existing street sweeper operators. And what would they be doing if they're a full-time employee?
So you mentioned this is a demanding analysis. Are you doing it?
I believe we've done it in a couple of areas. I don't believe we've done it in street sweeping. We've done it in paving, though, but not in street sweeping.
So Darwin, if I may speak a little bit here, I was talking and asking questions to Julian. Darwin mentioned that too. The crews that we use, they kind of multitask depending on the season that we have, so snowplow, other work. And in some cases, we have done the review and the analysis on where is more feasible to contract out. That's where we did this Windroad openings as a contractor, because there is benefit on doing that. I believe we also do the transit stops done by a contractor as well, because it's cheaper to do it in this way. When we speak about the street sweeping too, even during winter, when the winter season is not the hardest like this year, we actually do a street sweeping during the winter time.
Thank you. In the report, I noted, and this is a question that I have been asked by 2 neighbors, so you know exactly how many people in the city have actually asked this question. What do we do with the gravel? And apparently we filter it and we reuse about 75%. Is that correct?
That is correct. On the northwest end where our snow dump site is, we run it through a screen. The really dirty stuff goes to the landfill because it's classed as a hazardous waste because of the salt in it. And then the other cleaner part of the gravel, it's remixed into our new gravels that Operations is buying every year. We mix it, and then it's called pickling it. Pickle it with salt. We add salt into the clean gravel and the reused gravel and use that the next year on our roads.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
On that note, I remember back in the day my times at Waste and Recycling. I did ask the question to Darwin and Leah and Julian, because it was material that was not going to the landfill. And the answer at the time, and Julian just confirmed that with me, is it is an overall $500,000 a year savings for the team. in waste disposal fees. And in this case, we're actually reusing, and it's part of the circular material concept that we can reuse as much as we can.
So the $500,000 we're losing on one end, we're making up on the other.
No,
Good job.
we're not making 5,000 at the landfill. Was way less, but still, I asked the question at that time because I said, I'm not getting 100 and plus that I used to get. I said, well, no, we are reusing the material, which it was a good idea, so.
Good, thank you.
Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, you're next in queue.
Mr. Jewell, just come on back. So we take a look through the submission here today, and we see the what we did slide. So knowing what we did and adjusting that service level, what unintended consequences did we see as a result of the adjusted service level, and how are we addressing those issues?
I would ask Julianne, because I'm not up to date on all the public communication that's been done.
Sure.
But my initial response is we haven't had any negative consequences back from the public that I'm hearing about, but I think Julianne's ears are a little closer to the ground.
So residents have voiced frustration that we are not coming back, right? You know, their neighbors parked in front of their house, didn't move their car, then finally the neighbor moves the car, they want us to come back with a sweeper. That's just not possible. We have to balance. I have budget sheets in there where we are just at the threshold right now where we can make it work within the 1.3 million. So we just don't have the luxury to cater to needs like that. Also, there's still people that want more signs out, more communication, like these windshield wipers and door hangers. Again, that was just something that we had to cut and can't do that right now.
Okay. Is this something that appears on the Lethbridge Loop as well?
Yes.
Okay. And what are we doing for ticketing people who don't move at that time?
We have the current numbers. Since April 21st, there were 1,200. So we got here from Phil the numbers. As of April 21st, we have 1,200 violation tickets issued. So enforcement agents have been out there. 143 were appealed, 9 canceled due to the appeal, and then 32 canceled as courtesy by the officers. You know, sometimes people have valid concerns or reasons why we shouldn't issue a ticket. So that's kind of his overview. What's working well, they are trying to follow our sweepers now closely so that the timing is better. That's what we just implemented. There is still complaints about signage not being visible well enough. You know, it's at the end of the block and you live in the middle of the block or so. And then there is still frustration about the sweeper has passed by, the signs are still out, and now people get a parking offense notice. But it's just, again, to maneuver and coordinate everything like in a timely fashion. Normally the signs are out the day before. We start sweeping at 7 a.m. in the morning, and then we remove them before the end of the day. So we try to keep the time frame as narrow as we can, but it still creates some frustration with residents.
Okay, so it's much the same as what we saw with the snow plowing, and the ticketing then too is a resource issue as well.
In street sweeping, we've started this program from 2017, and we had a pause during the pandemic, but I'm gonna give you some numbers that I remember roughly. 2017, 18, and 19, we issued about 1,700 tickets, then it went down to about 1,100, and then it went down to 792. I remember that specific number, meaning every year people are accepting it and learning how to move their vehicles, and then they forget. We stopped doing it during the pandemic, and then we start doing it again. This, I believe, is the first or second year we've done ticketing with street sweeping since the pandemic.
Okay.
So really, we have to re-educate people again to move your vehicles, and so the effort is we have to educate people with all the communication and the ticketing. It's a package of things, and we always will get complaints on the people that are being ticketed, but remember the public communication we did, the rest of the public wanted to have enforcement to get basically their neighbors to move their vehicles because it was never them.
Right, yep, no. Exactly. No, thank you very much for that.
So we sweep the streets for a couple of reasons, right? It removes the debris, keeps pedestrians and vehicles safer, less chance of chips. But it also keeps things out of the drain and waterway, and it's for environmental protection. Have we seen anything, unintended consequence or anything for the environment from sweeping less? Or do we have any way of measuring that?
Julianne's our environmental person. We can't really measure that, but we are doing a lot, most of the spring sweeping. That's exactly why we do spring sweeping, is to get rid of all that salt and debris off the road from before it can go down a storm drain. But there's no way we can measure it as it hits the river. But you can comment on.
Just at a meeting with other municipalities where we compared notes, and some municipalities have a really low service level for sweeping, but then they have extensive work to do in cleaning out catch basins, which is way more complicated. Right now you have to go down a deep pool and use vacuum trucks. So I can look into, if you're interested, into further numbers where we can kind of compare the cost of managing it either upfront on the road or what others pay for managing it once it's down the storm drain and has to be removed.
No, because I assume that would take quite a bit of research and time to look into, so I'm not asking you to do that. It's just we have not seen any issues from an environmental perspective with the lessening of sweeping. As long as we keep to the spring sweeping, we should still meet that need? Okay, because the fall one was much more about leaves and stuff, things that weren't really an issue for the environment, because, I mean, leaves would naturally rot. It's the salt and everything that we need to make sure we collect up in the spring.
Right, but even the leaves and additional organic load onto the Old Man River would not be beneficial, right? That's why we treat wastewater, to take the organics out before we discharge, right? So we want to avoid anything into that water if we can.
And do we have any way of, I mean, we don't really have a way of monitoring this, but if there is issues, council would be made aware?
Yeah, I'm sure Fisheries and Ocean would flag that right away.
Well, we've just seen a few industries, unfortunately, lately put things into the river that have caused issues, and I would hate for it to be the city that is doing that by changing one of our service levels.
On the environmental aspect, there is, not in street sweeping, but in our snow and ice control program, we have a requirement by the federal government, I believe, to record and report to them all the salt we use every year, and they're highly encouraging us to reduce salt. Salt is the best thing to keep the snow from melting, but it also has detrimental effects. So it's a balancing act. So we are being encouraged and trying to reduce our salt usage as much as possible, and that is going around the country. So that's the environmental reduction of whatever is going to the river from that
And if
point.
we're using less salt, we'd have less street sweeping picking up salt, and so it'd all be impacting. Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Carlson, we'll go to you because you haven't had a chance to ask questions yet, and then we'll go to Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It was just, you triggered it by talking about the environmental impacts. Beet juice. Are we using beet juice instead of salt?
Troll now again, right? So beet juice still has a salt content. Like, people think it's all organic, it's not. There's salt in
But
there
it
so
still
that
is.
the stuff doesn't freeze. So we use it preferably on our pathways and downtown also. And just because, you know, especially for pet owners that use the pathways, we want something more natural and more natural product there. So that's where we mainly apply it.
Cool, thank you.
I will clean that up. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, you're next in queue.
Thank you very much. Last question from me. What, if any, of these pieces of equipment will we be seeing at the Big Truck Petting Zoo this weekend?
There will be a sweeper there. We already swept the parking lot.
Excellent.
And we did a better job than the contractor would do.
Oh, that's good to know.
So I had to throw that in. Then we have a grader there and a truck and also a loader. And then other departments will bring pickup trucks, police and fire. Well, there will be a good event.
Okay, perfect. So just for the public who is watching, this is a good opportunity to come out and find out what our public operations are doing, as well as learn more about these pieces of equipment too. Thank you very much.
And we now have commercials in the middle of standing policy committees. Public service announcements. All right. I don't see any other questions related to street sweeping. I will read the motion as we have it. It's coming from Councillor Middleton Hope. I will be questioning number 2 because directing something to a next council, I just want to know if that is something we can actually do, but I will read it as we have it. Be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee recommend that Council 1 direct administration to proceed with option 1 for all sweeping programs with existing funding within the 2023-2026 operating budget, and 2 direct administration to adjust the 2027, 2028 to 2031 operating budget for inflation to ensure current service levels are maintained. So my question is, isn't number 2 actually setting the budget for the next council? So can we actually do that? All we can do is recommend that administration adjust it and bring that forth to a budget. I don't think we can actually direct you to do a budget for the next council. Let's do it anyway. I have an issue with doing things incorrectly. So we can remove number 2 because it doesn't actually affect this. And I am assuming that would be something Mr. Sanchez's department would do anyways as part of next budget, but I don't think we can actually direct it. So can we just remove number 2? Would that be consensus from my colleagues? All right, because like I said, no. I do believe this is the one, though. Was this coming directly from the department? Mr. Stevenson, maybe you want to speak to this? Because if there's a very valid reason for why it's in there, we'll keep it. But otherwise, I have a concern about how that actually would read to the next council.
I would agree with that recommendation to remove number 2. That's something that we would do anyways as part of every budget process. Mr. Sanchez and his team will come forward with any inflationary pressures, and those would be communicated with council at that time.
All right. Yeah, like I said, it's just a little bit worrisome there. So then we just have the first one, the budget that is within our own mandate is part of the motion, and that is your motion, Councillor Middleton Hope.
You have an S on council? Council direct, sorry.
Absolutely.
Good. Any other questions or comments on the motion? None? Call a question then.
Question's been called. All in favor? All right, that passes as well. Thank you. Moving on, after I drive my computer off, moving on to the next submission. This submission is with the honorarium policy update. So we have 2 things here to consider. One, we have some recommended changes to the honorarium policy, which are in there. And then we have a correspondence from the Police Commission related to it, noting that the provincial appointed members are not getting the honorarium, and do we wish to include them or not? So there's sort of 2 things here, and we can ask questions on either in whichever order anyone wants to if we have questions. The other thing, just to kind of note as we're looking at this, we have had some members of our BCC's boards, committees, and commissions who are requesting not to get honorariums. They actually are a little offended that we want to pay them for volunteering. And so one of the things that you'll also note is an opt-out for people who do not want an honorarium, but they have to make sure that we are aware they are opting out. So all of that is sort of inside this submission. And we will start with any questions. Again, I don't see any members of the public here to ask questions on this, but I will open it up to my colleagues, starting with Councillor Middleton Hope.
So I'm not sure who we're going to direct these questions to.
Just ask the universe and we'll see what
All right,
happens.
I'll ask the universe. So the first one is, council members do not receive honorariums as contained within CC 67. Does that also include chairs of committees? So I'm speaking specifically of one in particular who is at the other end of the dais.
Keep in mind, this honorarium policy is only for our BCCs,
Yep.
not for outside
Right,
organizations.
so all of our BCCs, the chairs of those BCCs are not compensated, is that correct?
The chairs of our BCCs are compensated.
About if they're members of council.
No, but again, if a member is sent to a committee that we don't create, even a member of council as a chair can get an honorarium because that's different from this policy.
Understand that.
But
Okay.
If we are sitting on a BCC appointed, that we created and appointed by ourselves, then no, you would not, under this policy.
Well, that's my interpretation and yours. Is that administration's interpretation?
Will
Yes,
you
it
speak
is.
for all of administration, please?
Good.
I was asked to speak to this policy because the rest of the clerks aren't available today, but yes.
Thank you. Last is in regards to, I guess it's more of an agreement with Chair Paquette's submission that honorariums be paid by council to provincial appointees. Are we going to have a discussion about that, or just simply, if the motion is successful, goes to council and council will discuss it?
No, that would be a discussion that we can have here today. And right now, our motion does not include having, making any recommendations. So we can change the motion, or we can bring a different motion to the floor. So that is absolutely open for discussion right now as to whether or not we agree with the letter or not. We can also ask questions, both of members of the commission and the administrative assistant to
I'm
the
wondering
commission.
if we could bring the motion up so that we can have a look at it.
So right now, the motion is, be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee recommend that council approves the amended CC 67 honorariums for boards, commissions, and committees policy as provided in attachment 1 and includes nothing from dealing with LPC.
Okay, so I'd like to have a discussion about that then.
Please
Good.
go ahead.
Well, I think it's appropriate. We would be paying them anyway if they weren't provincial appointments. If they were city appointments, which they would be in other contexts, we would be paying them. So I would certainly advocate in favor of paying those two appointed members by the province to the Lethbridge Police Commission, which is consistent with, I believe, the letter from Chair Paquette.
Councillor Carlson, you're next in queue. And the rebuttal is?
There we are. I support the motion as presented. If the province wants to jump in and start appointing people to our committees, they can damn well pay them themselves. Thank you. Pretty easy.
All right, anyone else want to weigh in on that? Councillor Schmidt-Rempel?
As one of the council reps on the commission, part of the rationale behind adding the payment to the honorarium to the provincial appointees was to ensure that we were treating all appointees to the police commission equally. So we would be paying appointees from council, we would be paying, giving honorariums to appointees provincially. So it would be treating them all equally across the board. And that was one of the arguments and one of the decisions that drove our decision to approve this, to send this to council and make that request. And should they have been, yes, if they had been city council appointees, we would be paying them anyway, but at this point, they are not because they are provincial appointees, so that's why we had to have that separate discussion.
All right, Councillor Carlson?
I disagree, quite obviously. When council appoints members of our community to various committees, we go through quite a process to ensure that we are appointing the people that do the work on our communities, our citizens' behalf. We don't get any opportunity for oversight on any appointees that the province makes. They just pick and choose. And if they want to pay their people, feel free. But until they give us back that authority, I'm not, you'll never get my vote on that.
Okay. So let's separate the two issues. On the policy as brought forward, because it would be one change if we are looking to make a change. On the policy, the red line version, are there any concerns with one, letting people opt out? So nobody has any concerns there. Are there any concerns with basically the changes made, some definition changes? Some people really want to change where things are highlighted, making sure it's boards, commissions, and committees, not the other way around. No concerns with any of that. All right, so that part, I think we're all in agreement, will go forward as presented to council. So the first part of this motion is fine. If we want to look at a second part and somebody does want to bring forward a second part to the motion, this would now be the time for a motion arising or an amendment to this motion if you wish to do that. You're ready.
Okay. I would bring forward a motion arising that we look at providing honorariums to the public members of the Lethbridge
Motion
Police.
arising or an amendment? Because
No, I'm going to do a motion arising because we're going to end up separating this anyway and voting it on, because we don't have problems with CC 67 as it's rewritten right now. So I would bring it up as a motion arising because we're going to end up splitting it anyway.
Okay, then what we will do, just from clarity, we will vote on CC 67 as is, and then we will let it to Councillor Schmidt-Rempel if she chooses to bring a motion arising. Does anyone have any difficulties with that form of action? Councillor Carlson.
Thank you. It seems to be backwards. I think we need to amend the policy and then approve the policy if that's the will of committee, rather than approve the policy and then say, and then amend it.
Yeah, I
like, yep, but a motion arising to amend the policy, we don't even have the amendment in front of us. Like if I want to say
okay.
direct administration to bring back an amendment to allow X, Y, Z, or make that amendment right now, that's one thing. But approving a policy and then saying, oh, and now that we've approved it as provided, let's start amending it, doesn't make sense to me.
definitely, that's one way to look at it. The other thing, we haven't even looked at, no one has even asked the question, and I will now ask it. If we are looking at adding the 2 provincial appointees from the Police Commission, do we have any other provincial appointees on any other board? Let's just make sure one way or the other that we're only dealing with 2 people.
Not that I'm aware of. I spoke to the clerks this morning, and they didn't flag any more.
Okay, and do we have any sense of what other communities are doing? Because we're not the only police commission that had provincial appointees. We're not the only police commission or community that adds honorariums. What are we seeing in other communities?
I meet quarterly with policy analysts from ranging all over Canada that deal with police commissions specifically. And I brought this question up at our most recent meeting, and we were the only community that was making an exception for provincial appointees and not paying them if we were paying our other appointees.
And I realize there's a difference between principle and, you know, how we're looking at this. How much money are we looking at paying any member of police commission in a year?
So it looks like in total, rather than just any member individually, it would be about $800 for 2024.
For the entire police commission?
For the
one
entire,
per-
for
One
the
person.
2 people that we haven't yet paid.
So we, okay, so it's not a, I know it's not a budgetary concern for some members, but so we'd be looking at $800. Is it in the budget already, or is it, would be an
Yes.
increase? It's already budgeted for that $800?
Yes.
Okay, so just to have those facts on the table in front of us.
Madam Chair, that would be the maximum as well, because they're paid at the end of the year for the number of meetings that
Yeah,
they've actually attended.
if they miss meetings, they would not get paid for the missed meetings.
The only way it would end up being more is if that person chairs a meeting, which sometimes Vice Chair McHugh does chair meetings. He would have a tiny bit more on the sometimes that he ends up chairing a meeting.
And if there were more provincial appointees.
Yes, and if there ever are more provincial appointees that come down from the province, which could happen in the future.
Well, at that point, if the future council could actually just get rid of this honorarium at that point. If it was all provincial appointees, why would we be giving them money? And the other question, we have a recommended policy change from Ms. Paquette. In your opinion, would that be suitable, or would we need more if we were going to go for this?
That would be suitable. I have an option here that I can read out if you would like that information, Councillor Carlson. So it would have an additional amendment by adding the words "or provincial" after the word "council" in Section A, Clause 1, under eligibility criteria, so that it reads, "Honorariums will be provided only to council or provincial appointed public member volunteers." And then it would be a further be it resolved clause that you would go back and, or there's an option that you could have a further be it resolved clause to go back and pay those people for that year. However, if you didn't do that, the commission could decide to take care of that payment themselves for the year that they weren't paid. I can bring that option up. It's just was separate as the possible motion arising that would come later, but I'm sure that Ms. Kling can bring that up
So
for
there
you.
is 2 issues. One is recommending whether or not we make the changes in the amendment. And then there is the other decision about if we do make, well, whether or not we make the changes, or however we make the changes, would it only be for this year, or would we be back paying till January 1st, 2024? So keep that in mind. That question is also on the table. All right, Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, I don't think you ended your time. You've got your mic still on. Okay, Councillor Carlson.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a further question. I'm not sure who can, I'll ask the universe. The rationale that I used to exclude paying provincial appointees was the same rationale that was included in the policy, at least in my mind, for not paying organizational reps. We don't appoint them. The organization is in charge of that. Same with so the only way you'll get my support on this, you won't get my support on this actually, is if we amend the whole policy. If you're doing volunteer work on a board, committee, commission on behalf of your organization, your province. Hi, David, did you run down? So why are we just doing this for the special province employees and not for all folks?
So even though Councillor Carlson asked that to the universe, I believe the City Clerk's Department would have the answer.
Because in the Act, in the Police Act, which we are mandated to follow, which comes before any bylaws or policies that a council creates, it does not make any separation in the legislation between a provincial appointee and a council appointee. So we would be making a differentiation that is not made in the Act, which is why when I spoke to that group of policy analysts, they were concerned about making that sort of differentiation because it comes from the province, that legislation. Does that make sense?
So Ms. Thompson, is our whole discussion moot in that we have no choice in it, that we do have to pay the provincial appointees the same just because the provincial law would be above this bylaw?
I would say it is a legal risk you're taking, but I am not your legal representation.
All right, we do have our legal representation online. Mr. Lowen, have you been listening into the conversation? And would you have any recommendation from a legal perspective on this?
I apologize. I was just online messaging with my city, but I did hear that you were asking for me. So if you could just repeat the question, I'd be happy to weigh in.
I'll actually ask Ms. Thompson to reiterate what she said to give you a sense. We're looking at the honorarium policy and whether or not we should be including the 2 provincial members on the police commission, and whether or not we even have a choice to be made. But let Ms. Thompson explain.
So Councillor Carlson pointed out that organizational reps are not included in the amendments that we're proposing. And he was saying that there was not a difference between organizational reps and provincial reps. So if we're not doing it for organizational reps, why would we make a different exception for provincial representatives? And my suggestion is that the reason it would be different is because in the Police Act, which we are mandated to follow, which takes precedence legally over anything in any sort of legislation or policies that the city creates, that does not specify any difference between a member that's provincially appointed or a member that's appointed by council as far as their rights and responsibilities, excepting the fact that they cannot be a chair, or they actually does even allow them to be a chair. So there's no different, there's nothing different in the legislation. So my question would be a legal question to you. Is there a legal risk there in making a differentiation ourselves that is not necessarily allowed for in the legislation?
Well, I mean, framing the question as, can we go against the legislation? The answer, the question answers itself. Of course, we can't. I'd need a moment to go review the legislation to determine if we have even have an option. If they're supposed to have the same rights and responsibilities, one would think that they get treated the same in all respects as to municipal appointees. But again, I haven't reviewed that legislation, and it's the first time I'm being asked that question. So if you want a formal answer, just give me some time, and I'd be happy to do that and come back.
We have a couple of options then. There is no time crunch on this, Mr. Lowen. We could refer this to you and have you bring it back to June if that is one thing that my colleagues would like to look into. The other thing, if you're looking into that, one of the questions raised to us from the Police Commission is whether or not we need to pay back honorarium to next year. And I wouldn't mind a legal opinion on to whether or not we have to. Again, it's minimal money, but I'd sort of like to know if that would be required or not. Does it have to go back to when the policy came in or not? And the one being, of course, subsequent to the other. The first decision would determine whether or not we would have to include them at all. And then the second one, if we have to include them, do we have to pay back honorarium? And so that is an option to refer. I will bring that motion forward if I'm looking, see if I see consensus for getting that information. Otherwise, any discussion we have, we might have a different discussion once we get the legal opinion. Are you texting Mr. Sarsfield? I can give his comment if you'd like. No, make him come up and give it himself. Please come up, Mr. Sarsfield.
Thanks for allowing me to intrude. I didn't hear the first part of the discussion. I just saw that this is what you're on, so I came down and it just seemed interesting what the conversations and comments were being made. So first, I'd like to talk about just the organizational reps. The reason why we took that out is if you look at our recommendations regarding the formation of council committees, we took out any organizational reps being appointed. So currently, I believe the only one which applies right now would be the Animal Welfare Committee, and that one is subject for review by year end. So that's the reason why we took that out. And part of the confusion that arose with the organizational reps when we were trying to determine if they should receive funds last year, when our first year that we did it, is we didn't know if they were truly volunteering, if they were being paid for their services through the organization they were. So there were some judgment calls made, and we didn't necessarily make the right judgment call. So that's specifically the reason why the organizational reps has been taken out, because we no longer have organizational reps. So, and the other question was, I sent your clerk copies of the letters that we received from the province when Commissioners Heggie and McHugh were appointed. And there's a specific clause in there which says, and she has the letters, so she could probably read them out to you, which may answer some questions.
It says council may provide for the payment of reasonable remuneration or of a gratuity or allowance to members of the commission. It does not specify anything about whether you choose to pay your other members, you then would have to pay these members.
Yeah.
It's very vague.
Yeah. So it's still up to you, is all I'm saying is it's up to you.
I love vague legislation. It's always awesome. So unless I hear differently, I will bring a motion, a referral motion, to refer this to administration into Mr. Lowen's department and to hear back in June and to reconsider this in June. Will that work as a motion? And you need some time, Ms. Thompson, to draft that? Oh, go ahead, Councillor Carlson.
Further to that, Mr. Sarsfield said we removed organizational reps from, organizational reps are still referenced in the policy. So I'm wondering if we should remove that. It's under item A, eligibility criteria 3. Honorariums will not be provided to organizational representatives. So should we remove that or, yep, sure. I asked the universe, so you can be
Mr.
part of the
Sarsfield,
universe.
you are the universe right now.
Well, I'm glad you recognize who I am. So on Tuesday in the Lethbridge Herald, my name is Paul, so in case you're wondering. So you may still want to do the reference to the organizational reps, just because the policy is currently what it is, and we aren't currently appointing organizational reps, but that could change with the new council. They may decide to do that again. So just because we have excluded it from all committees, there could be a new committee set up November 1st with organizational reps.
Thank you. Can I ask, Madam Chair, that that be part of what is comes back in the referral? Because I think in parity, if we're arguing that a member is a member is a member is a member, no matter who appoints them, then I think for fairness and equity, if the route council wishes to go is to pay provincial appointees, we better damn well pay our organizational appointees as well, because it's the same rationale. You can't,
See, I would see it differently because an organizational rep is still on the clock. They're still getting paid by their
no,
thing.
if somebody from the Historical Society gets appointed to a board.
We don't ever expect to get paid.
Exactly. But that's what I'm saying. There is language in there that if you're being paid to attend a meeting by your organization, you're ineligible. But it goes further to say, if you're an organizational rep, I know that board members from our seniors centers used to attend meetings, not being paid by the seniors organizations, but did not get provided an honorarium by the city, but they were doing the same work as the member on either side of them.
So the question there isn't, I guess the expectation was organizational reps would be paid staff, but not all organizational reps are paid staff. So the real question is honorariums would not be paid to those already being paid by another organization is the real crux of the issue. Yeah. Mr. Lowen, did you get that as well? That's another concern is the organizational rep, if, I don't know if that's me, I don't know if that's actually a legal question, but.
I'm not sure if that's a legal question, but if council wanted to consider it, you could consider a rule just against being paid twice.
Yeah, no double dipping is really the issue. Yeah. Okay, so if we could look at 4.3 and somehow reword that before June as a no double dipping thing. Yeah, that's mostly what we're concerned about. All right, so we do have the motion, Ms. Thompson? Okay. As we just ramble on with other things, we'll let you have time to finish the typing. Anybody else have a ramble to include?
Just item 2, I think, not notified of those already provided compensation.
Okay.
So I think it's already there.
So 4.3 you could just strike. Yeah, I get the principle. I get the principle part. Yeah. Just think of it as downloading onto the city. It's never happened before. This might be the first precedence of downloading. All right, so now we have a referral motion. Be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee refer this matter to administration to return to the June 26, 2025 Governance Standing Policy Committee meeting with 1, a legal opinion on the payment of provincial employees. Oh, not provincial employees, provincial appointees. Because provincial employees would be double dipping. And 2, legislative opinion on the inclusion of organizational appointees. Work for you, Mr. Lowen? No, I think he left again, or not. All right.
Yes, that'll be fine. We might, a little bit of forgiveness in terms of the filing deadline from the clerk's office to get it on the next agenda, but the question is clear.
Okay. All right. I have brought this forward, so I will call the question. All in favor? And that is referred. Thank you all for that conversation. Moving now to the third submission, which is on the CC60 public participation policy. This was a lot of housekeeping. I always love watching who writes these policies, who likes to put capitals everywhere and who likes to remove capitals. It's actually fun to see because I would have capitalized everything too. I love my capitals. And so we have the red line and the clean, and this did come from Ms. Bronwyn's department. And so any questions regarding CC60? And I see Councillor Carlson in the queue.
Chair, yes, I had fun going through it as well and going, why did we change public to public? And it was capitalized both ways. It just looked like the font was changed. It was very intriguing to me. But in the very first statement of purpose, it just talks about encouraging and enhancing the public engagement. I think we should get rid of the word the. Yes, just the one. I went through it and that was the only thing I saw.
And we're changing more than 2 words.
Yeah, yes,
Yes,
I found
we
that
are.
out this
All
time.
right.
Yeah,
Can someone- and
and
again-
just for consistency, we always call it public engagement, but this is the only time it's referred to as the public engagement.
Well, and it's actually funny because it's public participation policy, and everywhere else we talk about public engagement. So, but it is public participation. All right, is that the only recommended change? It is actually the first literal sentence
the
in the whole
first line.
policy.
You raise a good question.
I think actually we have to have a public participation policy as per provincial direction. I think it is a public participation. I think
Okay.
that's the actual name of it.
Thank you.
You can do that when it comes forward. Any other questions or any other concerns with this? Well, you're bringing this one forward, Councillor Middleton Hope, so.
We're lining up our amendments.
So be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee recommend that council approve the amended policy CC 60 public participation policy as provided in attachment 1. And they, yeah. I don't know if the needs another part to it. I don't.
You don't want to further be resolved just for that?
I don't think so. As long as that was changed before it comes to council, or else Councillor Carlson will just notice it then too.
Just leave it. Yeah.
All right, Councillor Middleton Hope?
Yep, unless there's any other debate that my colleagues might want to involve. No, then let's call the question.
Question's been called. All in favor? And
Thank
that
you.
passes unanimously as well. So we move now to the closed agenda. There was a submission on the closed agenda, update on government relations strategy. We will only move into closed if people tell me they have questions on the submission. Otherwise, okay. Are there questions on the submission that have to be asked in a closed session?
So I can ask mine in open.
All right, Councillor Carlson, go ahead and ask yours.
Thank
And if it's deemed that it should be asked and closed, that
Thank
will
you.
then move us into closed.
Oh, perfect. I like that process. Thank you, Madam Chair, through you to Mr. Gauthier. Gauthier? I like Gauthier. Gerald, this seems very targeted at Alberta. Do we have another one that's targeted to other stakeholders we may be advocating to, such as the feds? It just really sort of talks about our contribution to Alberta, and it doesn't. If someone was traveling to visit somebody in Ottawa, perchance, they
Later this
might-
week?
they may want to know the effect, the impact we have on.
Mr. Gauthier, can your answer be
Is
done
it-
in
yeah, I'm-
open, or do
I
you
think
need to be
it
in
can.
closed? Again,
I mean, it could be the same thing, that where it states we have an X billion-dollar impact in Alberta. I'm assuming that that's an X billion impact in Canada as well, correct?
I think I can safely answer in public that what's in the closed document could certainly be used in a federal context.
Okay.
And I
Thank
would, yeah.
all right. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel?
Well, my question is in relation to, yes, the closed session document, but related to the announcement from the School Accelerator Program and those announcements that we just saw this week. We saw 11 schools coming to different communities, and Lethbridge was not one of them. So I'm just wondering where our strategy is at working with the school boards on making sure that their priorities are being met in regards to these, in regards to the closed session documents, because I don't see them included in there as well. And we missed out on some schools.
Referring to in addition to the schools that we've already had approved, which is 3.
But we missed, there was an announcement of 11. Did we get anything additional, and are we working to get other schools approved as well?
Most recent announcement.
I see Mr. Gauthier has an answer for me.
I'm not confident I could speak candidly and
Motion to go in closed.
All right, so let's,
Thanks, Gerald. I can get coffee now.
okay, I have a motion from Councillor Carlson somewhere behind me. Okay, so Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, be it resolved that we do now enter a closed meeting at 3:05 PM to discuss confidential matters with respect to item 7.1 as per sections 21 harmful to intergovernmental relations and 24 advice from officials of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel?
I'll call for the vote.
Question's been called. All in favor? I'm in favor. All right. Opposed? I know, but I think he wants to put his opposition on the record. All right. We are in closed. All right, we are back out of closed session. I have a motion coming out of close from Councillor Schmidt-Rempel. Update on government relations strategy. Be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee directs that the closed meeting documents, discussions, and report with respect to the update on government relations strategy remain confidential pursuant to sections 21, harmful to intergovernmental relations, and 24, advice of officials of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Councillor.
Thank you very much to our administration for their work on this. If my colleagues have no further questions or comments, I will call for the vote.
Question's been called. All in favor? And that deals with the confidential item, brings us to adjournment. We are adjourned. We're not adjourned? You can't counter an adjournment. It's a unilateral decision. We're adjourned. Everybody go home.
Does it matter that you wanted it on the closed agenda for council?
No.
Just happened? I like it.